previous job right before I was in politics, I was doing marketing analytics. So which is actually helpful in a couple of ways. The thing about politics and campaigning, especially, that I don't think most people realize, it's actually very objective, actually. So I have 23,000 people who live in my district. I have about 18,000 people who can vote. And looking at historical data, about 12,000 or 13,000 of people per election do vote. And so it's just a simple math game at this point, right? So if I have 12,000 of people who are going to turn out for an election, I have to get 6,001 votes. And so you just start doing the math. So if I'm a Democrat and in my district, I have, let's say, 4,500 registered Democrats, I think I can assume safely that those will pretty much vote for me no matter what. So I already have 4,500 people already accounted for. How do I find another 1,501? And so then you start looking at data. And so we actually have voter files, and we have algorithms that the party provides us on how conservative they are or how moderate that they are. And so I start looking at the data and saying, all right, 1,500 people, who are the voters who are, number one, most likely to actually come out and vote? And two, who are the voters that are the most moderate or the ones most likely to vote for me? And so basically that narrows the pool of people that you actually have to talk to, because you don't have an unlimited amount of time, right? And so you start looking at the data and realizing, oh, okay, so of the 1,501, there are about maybe 3,000 households in my district who satisfy that criteria. Not everybody's going to answer their doors. So you just start doing the math on how many times do I have to knock every single one of those 3,000 doors in my district to talk to them and then try to get them to vote for me. So the analytical part of that was very helpful for campaigning. The marketing was also helpful as well. I was used to creating marketing campaigns for a brand. Well, the difference about being a candidate is that you are the brand. And so it's just a matter of being able to sell people rather than selling them on buying a hamburger or buying them on traveling to San Francisco. You're selling them on yourself and why you're the best candidate to fight for them. And so that helped out as well. Kind of another kind of tangential question is how to prepare for politics. I use this analogy sometimes, is that running for office is somebody coming up to you and saying, hey, do you want to go to the moon? And then you're like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to go to the moon. But then nobody is there to explain to you how to get to the moon. How do you build a spaceship? What does a spaceship look like? And so that spaceship is your campaign. And so for me, it was just talking to a lot of people who have run campaigns before, who are involved in politics, and then just taking the best practices and applying that to my personal experience, and then how to sell my story to people. One of the best pieces of advice that I got in marketing, and it applies to politics as well, is that best practices are best practices for a reason, right? They're tried and true, they work. But what separates somebody who's good and somebody who's great is take those best practices and then just kind of mess them up a little bit, like 10%. Just kind of poke at them about 10%. And that's what makes you truly memorable to somebody. And so a good example is maybe Patagonia as a brand. They run like a normal business, but they're just maybe a little bit more sustainability focused than everybody else. And people remember Patagonia for that. Sometimes even mistakes can make you a little bit more memorable. So working in marketing, the emails that get you the most engagement from your fans are emails that have a typo in them. Because as soon as people see a typo in them, they're replying to you and saying, hey, you messed this up, you should fix this, blah, 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 blah. Well, that allows you to engage with them in a more authentic manner, right? They're not just getting the emails and reading them. It actually forces them to kind of interact back with you. And so it's that kind of thinking that I try to incorporate into my first campaign, definitely.
Oh my, I think I learned that math help in politics. You need to do a lot of calculation, also marketing.
Yeah.
Oh God, a lot to learn. Okay, our next question. We got a lot of questions. Okay, it seems you were elected, first time elected is in 2018. And it's been a few years. So I'm sure you have achieved a lot. So can you share with us some of your accomplishments or the moment that made you proud? Must be a lot.
So the sad truth, actually, and this is not a proud thing, but in Kansas, I'm a super minority, right? And so there are 85 Republicans in the House and 40 Democrats. And for the most part, Republicans do not like rewarding the Democrats because the more they reward the Democrats, the more Democrats win. And so there's actually a very interesting power dynamic. So almost never does a Democrat actually get one of their bills passed. More often, in Kansas at least, our victories and our accomplishments are playing successful defense on, I would say, egregious or harmful things that the other side is trying to do. So one thing that I'm very proud of this year, and I think I'm the only one in the legislature who would have had this experience, is that I have been able to successfully defeat Chris Kobach twice this session. Chris Kobach is the new attorney general. He has a very long history of being xenophobic and anti-immigration. A couple of times this session, he has tried to bring about language on foreign adversaries. Either foreign adversaries can't own agricultural land, or foreign adversaries, or the state can't own stock in foreign adversaries, that type of language. However, his language on the definition of foreign adversary is so broad that it would have defined any legal immigrants or refugee even of China, Russia, Iran, Argentina, Russia, North Korea. It would have defined any legal immigrant in the United States as a foreign adversary, which is obviously very hurtful to us and our community. And so I brought that up every time that language was brought. I chatted with all my Republican friends who are in the majority party, like this language is actually very damaging. I told them my story that I moved to the United States in 1991. I naturalized in 2001. And so that means under Chris Kobach's definition, for 10 years of my life as a child, I would have been considered a foreign adversary, which is obviously unacceptable. And so I just really worked hard to get people to understand what he was trying to do and why it was hurtful. And so luckily those bills did not pass. And then so that I'm very proud of.
Oh God, that is the moment of victory to defeat Chris. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm proud of it.
There's a question in the chat. What is a foreign adversary? So there's actually a defined list that the U.S. federal government has of foreign adversaries. And so again, it's adversary, or it's other countries who are like essentially enemies of the United States. And so right now, China is one of them. Russia, North Korea, Iran, and Argentina. So it's just a list of countries to be careful of, as we go on. And so, there is probably a justified cautiousness that we should have towards a lot of these countries. But I think, as all of us here know, that through COVID, a lot of the times when white people get suspicious of the Chinese government, they take it out on Chinese Americans, and that's very dangerous.
That's very true, and that's very real. Unfortunately. Oh God. This is American reality. Okay, let's move to next question. I think it's number 5. We're talking to a group of Chinese parents. And so when you first decided to get into politics, how your parents react to it? do they support you or do they say no? So what's their reaction then and now?
This is a really good question and a very personal question, and a very apt question. I think it's probably relevant to any kids that are listening to this. My father is very supportive. My dad has always been very proud. He knows that fighting what I'm fighting for in politics is important. Representing our community in Kansas as the only one is important. My mom is actually very not in support of what I do. She and I actually had a pretty big fight over this past Christmas. They had never been to any of my inaugurations. I'm in my third term now, and so I was trying to convince my parents to come to my inauguration because it's a special moment for me, even still. And my mom just goes, "Well, I don't support what you do. Why would I come to your inauguration?" So that's really hurtful, right? I'm fighting every day against bad odds to fight for our community. And I think it just comes down to a very innate, to use the Chinese stereotype. She's just a tiger mom. She wants me to be a lawyer, or she wants me to be a doctor, or she wants me to be in business. And because I don't follow the path that she thinks I should have taken, she's disappointed. And then for additional context, I have an older sister, and she's a doctor who went to Stanford, who went to med school at Boston University, who was a doctor at Yale, right? Like literally the ideal Chinese kid. And then politics was just far enough out of my mother's comfort zone that she doesn't approve.
Well, it's great that you stand on your own, and I think your mom will be proud of you eventually.
I think so too.
Yeah, I believe so. Okay. Well, good thing you got your dad support you. Okay, our next question. So as a politician, after all these years, can you name some essential or some characteristic or features that you must have?
Yeah, I think this characteristic is true of every industry and not just politics, but especially important in politics is curiosity. You have to be able to create your own questions, and then you have to be able to find your own answers. In politics, there are lots and lots of people and lots of lobbyists who are paid a lot of money, whose job it is just to come to your office and tell you, this is what's happening, you should vote for this bill. It takes another level of curiosity to wonder, actually, I should question that premise, and actually, I should go to different sources to see if that's actually true and whether or not I should actually vote for this bill. And so I think that is a very healthy skepticism that you should have. There's also obviously a lot of other soft skills. So one thing that I talk a lot about is that I have a non-anglicized name, right? You can choose to anglicize, you can choose not to anglicize your name. That's great. But I think one of the benefits of not having an anglicized name is that growing up in high school, I always had to do a sort of social math. If a substitute teacher came in and didn't know how to pronounce my name, I always had to do the math on, well, is it actually worth correcting them on my pronunciation? If I do correct them, what is the most effective way that I can communicate that? And so that has benefited me, I think, now in my legislative career on kind of those soft social skills to be able to talk to a lot of other people. Because again, I am in the super minority. I can never pass a bill that I want on my own. If I want to pass anything that is of substance, I have to have a lot of Republicans vote for me or vote with me and support me and back me up. And so just being able to talk to them and then tell them my point of view and why that's important, why they should help me accomplish that is very important. And I think finally that another important thing is just to be able to find separation in your life. Again, I lose a lot. I lose basically every single day in the Kansas legislature. And it's just being able to recognize that, that's going to happen. That there are other fights worth fighting the next day, and you just have to keep going, because a lot of people and a lot of vulnerable, marginalized communities are counting on you to keep fighting for them.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I think keep fighting for those who count you, and this is great persistence. This is very important. And the first one, curiosity. That's also very important for whatever you do for your career. Okay, let's move to the next one. You know, we ask this question to everybody. It's like we expect people to have some plan that how they see themselves in 5 or 10 years. Uh, I'm sure you have your plan for your future.
So I get asked this a lot. So right now I'm a state representative, but the reality is that in Kansas there are not that many other positions to move up into, right? So I'm a state representative. You could be a state senator, which we were talking before. I don't want to be in the state senate. You could be a U.S. representative, but I'm very, very happy with my current U.S. representative, Sharice Davids. And then you can run statewide for governor or attorney general. And I have no desire to do that at all. And so right now, yeah, thinking and being one of the younger legislators, what is the plan? So the one idea that really, really sparkles my mind and makes me think a lot is running for the first time, and then running for my re-elections. Actually, I received almost no institutional support from Asian American organizations. I reached out to a couple, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't really support down ballot candidates, but we would support you if you wanted to run for Congress," which is actually a really ineffective way to build Asian American political power. Because if nobody supports me now at the state legislator level, like, at some point I'm just going to quit, and there's nobody to run for Congress, right? You have to support down ballot candidates, and you have to build a bench of Asian American candidates at city council, school board, state representative levels, so that we have a big pool of Asian Americans to eventually run for Congress or Senate or president, and then advocate for a community. Right now, as far as I'm aware, and I've reached out to a lot, there's no such infrastructure in Asian American politics. One of my best friends in the legislature, Brandon Woodard, he's gay, and the gay community has what's known as the Victory Fund. And the Victory Fund provides a lot of support, both monetary and just like campaign help, to help gay legislators or gay elected officials get elected. And I'm very happy for Brandon. I'm very proud of what the gay community has been able to do, but it makes me a little bit envious that the Asian American community does not have anything similar. And so the thing that sparkles my brain over the next 5 and 10 years is to help more Asian Americans get elected to elected offices.
So to build Asian American infrastructure.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a tough job, but it's very promising because we have a lot of Asian American.
A lot of Asian Americans have quite a bit of wealth in this country, but I think we're very hesitant to spend it on politics. But if we're able to flex our muscle a little bit, we can hold a lot more power than we currently do.
I think we will get there. Just keep on fighting. Okay, let's actually move to our naturally move to our next question. Is your advice for building grassroots Chinese American organizations that to help promote our communities? participation in local and national level.
Yeah, I mean, it's really to get involved. Be united and then have stances and pay attention. So again, when that foreign adversary bill came up that I was talking about earlier, I didn't have any Asian American groups reach out to me being like, "Hey, no, this language is very xenophobic." I had to catch that on my own. But if we have more Asian American civic communities or groups who are looking at legislation every day, then I think we can catch a lot more of the bad stuff that's going on. So really, it's just be a part of an organization. If there is not an organization where you are, think about starting one. And then pay attention to how your local elected officials and state elected officials are talking about you and your community. Again, in Topeka, I've been there 5 years now. I can count on one hand, I think, how many times an Asian American person has come to a committee and given testimony. In Topeka and in many rural states across the country, we just quite frankly never hear from Asian Americans. And so it would be valuable to get more input.
Again, is to get more people involved in grassroots organization. Okay, let's move to the next one. Okay, let's see. So any advice to young people who are interested in politics, in getting into?
Yeah, and then I guess the next two questions are similar, but again, it's the exact same question as the last one. Is just to get involved. Is again, make sure that your elected officials know how you believe and know what you stand for and what you expect out of them, and then keep following up with them and let them know that organizations and coalitions feel the same way, and then so learn from people that you look up to and trust. If any of you want to come to Topeka and shadow me or learn from me, I'm happy to do so. But it's just really getting involved, and then to go back to another question, have some curiosity. Maybe you come shadow me in Topeka and you're like, no, I hate this, I can't do this, which is valid. But at least you asked that question of, could I do this? And so I think just have the curiosity and see, is this worth it? Is this worth fighting for? Is my community needing somebody like me to speak up for them?
Okay, here's an opportunity. If any kids wants to have some experience, you can shadow Ray. Okay, let's move to the next question. So any suggestions? Like I know you have a little girl. Do you encourage her to follow your path, or what was your advice to her?
I would say follow your own path. And then again, going back to that conversation about my mother, if I would have lived my life based on my mother's expectations of myself, I would have been unhappy and unfulfilled. My life would look very differently than what I do today. And I have a job that I'm very proud of and that I'm very happy in. And so just forge your own path. Listening to your parents is good. Their feedback is good. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's what regrets are you going to have, when you're on your deathbed or when that next generation takes over. For me, I just couldn't not fight anymore. And so, I would say don't follow my path, follow your own path. If my path is inspiring to you and I can help you, I'm always happy to do so. But if she wants to try to be an artist, try it. Have a backup plan. Have a financially sound backup plan, of course. But pursue your passions first. Pursue your curiosities first. If you can make a living on them, great. But live your life for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the word, your words of wisdom, that follow your own path, and then have a backup plan. Okay, I think that's all our questions. That's all my question for you. Now it's time for other people to ask you questions. Let's see if anybody has questions. Let's see.
I think there are 2 questions in the chat. Maybe Ray can answer those 2 first. The first one is there a middle ground? Some politicians have side business.
So I think that question is probably referring to my mom, and then whether or not there's a middle ground between what I do and something my mom could be proud of. And maybe, I mean, so right now, being a politician is not my full-time job. It's a full-time job from January through May, but it does not pay very well. And so I have to have a side business. I'm doing marketing, but it would be very, very difficult to have any of the jobs that my mom would be okay with, which is being a doctor. You basically can't do both. A lawyer, you could do both, but it's difficult. And then side business, I mean, I have my own kind of sole proprietorship to do my marketing side business, and it doesn't really satisfy what she's proud of. And then so again, maybe there's a middle ground, but I'm just not living my life solely due to what my mom prefers. And another question is, do you feel the tension between China and the U.S. makes your job position harder? Not really. It doesn't really come up very much. It comes up once in a while, like I was talking about with the foreign adversary language. But what's nice is that for the most part, state government is removed from diplomatic issues, which is a federal issue. And then so very rarely does that happen. Another thing that is a benefit is that Kansas is an agricultural state, and 2 of Kansas's main exporting partners is China and Taiwan, right? And so we have a vested interest in, even though they might have tensions at a political level, on an economic level, Kansas and China are very well aligned. And so that kind of helps things a little bit.
So money works.
Money works. Money is a good way to solve a lot of issues.
Yeah, I can see that with Macron visiting China. Yeah. And they are very happy because they got a good deal. Okay, and any more questions?
I have one question. So, Ray, you mentioned that there are not a lot of support from the Asian American community to politicians, especially from ground level, like lower level. What do you think caused this kind of phenomenon?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just attitudes like my mother's, whereas that politics is not a noble or economically viable enough job for their kids to aspire to do, and so until we make civic engagement and political engagement a priority in our communities, it's hard to sell everybody else on why it's important as well. And so, I think to some extent it's generational. First generation immigrants have very different views on what Americanization looks like and integration looks like than second generation Americans. And so I think that's kind of why is that a lot of first generation immigrants do not value politics as an actual career, and so it's just going to take a little bit of time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe the language is also a barrier because of that? So not a lot of first generation immigrants pay a lot of attention to politics at all?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it too. And then part of it too is a lot of first generation immigrants have a lot of other issues to follow and deal with than what's going on in Topeka every day or what's going on in Washington D.C. every day. Immigrants are trying to find their own niche where they move to, right? I remember my parents when they first moved to Rolla, Missouri, no friends, no infrastructure, and so they had to make their own way and spend their time making friends. And then there's just other things on their mind.
And you said that you are going to do more to get the Asian American community involved and to the politicians. What is your plan? How do you want to make that happen?
So one of the things that I'm trying to pass, and I have been trying to pass for a couple of years right now, is creating in the state government an Asian American Affairs Commission. So right now we already have an African American Affairs Commission and a Hispanic Latino Affairs Commission. We also have a kind of a tribal Indigenous Affairs Commission, and all of those are in Topeka every day, and they advise the governors on issues that are going on within their communities. Right now, Asian Americans are about 4% and growing of the Kansas population, and we do not have an Asian American Affairs Commission yet. And so one of my goals is to create one and create an executive board and then use that as a mechanism to get more Asian Americans to speak up and then be in Topeka.
That is great. I think, definitely get more Chinese American involved into your committee or whatever. I mean, I think a lot of time we just feel so far away from politics, and definitely a lot of people are still interested.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, I think Jesse, you want to?
Yeah, I do have a question. So, have you ever encountered any conflicts between your job, which means your political position, and your personal beliefs?
No. So
Never?
No, actually. So I am fortunate that my personal politics very closely align with the district that I represent. And so my job first and foremost, right, is actually to put my personal beliefs aside and represent my district and what my district wants me to do. But I am fortunate that we're very well aligned.
So you talk. I'm sorry. You talk a lot about immigrants. So how would you talk to some immigrants who become, citizen or become permanent resident through legal procedures that they support certain policies that would help illegal immigrants to become legal? So how would you deal with that?
So is your question saying, so there are some, I mean, in the Asian American community, there's a lot of different opinions on basically undocumented immigrants, right? On whether or not.
Right. How would you communicate with them on that issue?
I would communicate that for me, and again, this is my very personal opinion, is that the vast majority of undocumented immigrants who come to the United States are escaping unfathomably horrific situations. And it is not an especially easy nor safe path to illegally get to the United States. It is very dangerous. A lot of people die. A lot of people end up drowning in boats trying to get to America. The only reason you would do that is because you feel significantly safer in the United States than you do where you're coming from. And so I think, sure, we don't want scores of people trying to get in illegally, but if they do get here, I think we do have to explore a path once they are contributing members of our society. Once they're here, we should look at paths on how to get them further on the tax rolls. Because right now, if you're undocumented, you're not paying the full amount of taxes. If we are able to find a path for them to get residency somehow, then they would actually pay more in taxes. And then help fund more services. Good question.
I always thought about it because a lot of jobs, for example, lawyer, right? Doctor, a lot of times they have to make the decision that against their personal beliefs or personal political stance. So, of course, as a politician, and I look at the district you serve, it's very interesting. For example, Mission Hill, it's very wealthy. So how do you balance, the wealthy residents in your district and the group of people that you want to also represent that is not that wealthy, that marginalized the resident in your district?
The benefit, well, here's the thing. Mission Hills is very, very, very wealthy. I have one of the wealthiest districts in the state because of Mission Hills. The thing about Mission Hills is that the houses are so big that not that many people live in them. Mission Hills is like 5,000 people. My district is 23,000 people. Much of the other part of my district is more working class, even though, kind of professional working class, like accountants and stuff like that. So I don't give any undue weight to the 6,000 rich residents that I have in Mission Hills to the 17,000 other constituents that I have, and so it's just balancing and then taking feedback. I knock a lot of doors because it's very easy to get a selection bias in my job. I only hear from the same 30 people who call me and email me all the time, right? It's very easy to get into that echo chamber, which is why I make it a concerted effort to knock doors, because when I knock on a door, I run into the mother of three who's trying to make dinner for them in between her two jobs. Whereas she's not paying attention to Peak every day. She's not emailing me her thoughts because she's too busy. But if I'm able to catch them at the right time, I'm able to get a little bit more dynamic feedback. And so that's how I try to balance kind of all the competing interests that I have. But thank you for the answer. Even the wealthy people in Mission Hills are pretty moderate or even pretty progressive now in my district, so that helps as well.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Jing Chun, you want to?
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Xu. Thank you for your sharing. Very insightful and really highlights the issue or the common challenges Asian Americans face in the political area. I'm in New Jersey, very close to New York, and you reminded me Andrew Yang, who also ran for Democrat campaign in the past, and in the end he didn't win, even though we're a blue state. He started a new party himself that also highlights the limited support an Asian politician can gain in such competitive space. What I want to ask you first is, though, do you collaborate with some organizations, nonprofit organizations like AAAJ, Asian American Advanced Justice? I see Advancing Justice. I've seen them growing, especially during the pandemic. I think pandemic to some extent also favored those organizations to grow. So where you were saying that we didn't have enough Asian American infrastructures or support is now improving, I think, to some extent because of pandemic.
Yeah, no, I agree. The pandemic definitely created a sense of solidarity in our community that I had not seen before. So here in Kansas City, for the first time that since I've lived here in 10 years, we actually had kind of an Asian American vigil after a lot of the violence, and then that kind of grew, and we started having Lunar New Year festivals, and so it's definitely grown in the pandemic. I've not heard of AAJ before, but I'd be broadly interested. I think I have been involved in a couple of other organizations like Stop AAPI Hate. I have a couple of panels and stuff like that with. So I agree, it's improving. Most of those are run by like very, very young organizers, which is also very inspiring. And so, yeah, just hopefully that we're able to get a groundswell of, again, probably mostly second generation immigrants of like, you know, their parents immigrated here and now they're starting to grow up and trying to find their place. I think that's where I truly find hope.
Yeah, I agree. I want to mention that in New York, we have a museum called MoCA, Museum of Chinese American. And it's trying to build a model or frame of honors to show the recent Asian models or heroes from different industries that would inspire the next generation to follow their soup. So I hope one day you'll be on the hall, and yeah, it's very rare to have a political leader representing Asian. I think that's another way to promote broader engagement from our community.
Yeah, I've taken the approach that like, if I even aspire one young Asian American boy or girl to think about it just because I exist, that's good. You have to have role models, right? Growing up, I loved basketball, but every time I would play, people called me Yao Ming, which doesn't make any sense. I'm not 7'6", you know. But once Jeremy Lin came along, all of a sudden people started calling me Jeremy Lin, and then that made a lot more sense. I look a lot more and play a lot more like Jeremy Lin, and so hopefully he also inspired a lot more Asian Americans to maybe look at sports and show how we could be excellent in the athletic arena as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Eileen Gu also inspired more young kids to start learning skiing since the Winter Olympic. That's how we all learn. Unfortunately, we need leaders to drive and really show a successful path for others to follow. That's how Chinese grew in the past. And people are all afraid of being the first one leader alone.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually have a few more questions if I have time. I think one of the challenge or the myth with Chinese education is that we focus so much on meritocracy, and that is laser focused on getting good scores, getting into prestigious colleges, with very narrow understanding of broader community, broader career path. And that has fundamentally narrowed our presence in other industries. I read the book, because I'm a first generation, I read a book about ethnic American. And it's so interesting that out of all ethnic American, some so-called lower classes, like Irish, ended up being more successful in terms of community engagement. They can develop career in education, in community service, more politician, and even entertainment industry as well. Very broad, and they build their business broadly as well. Whereas Asian is successful in very specific industries, and it's been so long. We were here since 1884 So it's not just about the generation or the limited history. I think there's still fundamental issues we need to address as parents, education-wise, because the parents don't know enough. They're going to teach the children the same way, and the children will just repeat the past without breaking the circle. So that, how do you feel about that?
I totally agree about all of that. And then there's actually, I have a somewhat cynical view on meritocracy. I think Americans broadly value a meritocratic society, and then the Asian Americans certainly do, but America doesn't actually function that way. What we see is that many times when you're able to rise up, a lot of the times they climb the ladder and then pull the ladder up behind them so other people can't follow. And we see that a lot in politics, and then especially in the business world. And so a meritocracy means that someone who's rich and smart and someone who's poor and smart wind up in the same place. We know that is not true in America. And so part of my job is to kind of level the playing field and try to create policies that is true. Whereas if you are poor and talented, you have just as much of a chance of succeeding as if you're rich and talented, or quite frankly, rich and poor, or rich and dumb.
Wow. I really admire that at this age, you already strive for fairness in the community, which is very rare, and you must be very patient too. I work for corporates. I already get fatigue with the inefficiency in corporates, not to mention in political space and campaign and various committee meetings. It's how do you survive as a young person?
I think patience is a good word. Sometimes it takes a little bit of probably dumb optimism on my part that over time things can get better. Sometimes it's more time that I would prefer, but it's just a kind of blind and dumb optimism that if enough people like me fight and then try to make the world better, that over time that it will get better. It has not felt like that for a couple years now, I know that, but it doesn't change unless positive people and trustworthy people run for office.
How do you find allies from your generation or from your peers?
So one of the things that I do and that I'm very proud of, and now that I think about it, it would have been a good prior answer. So I am one of the co-chairs of what we call the Kansas Future Caucus. And so it's all the legislators of any party who are under the age of 40 in Kansas. So there's about 25 of us. And so what we try to do is we try to take the approach friends first. Humans, as we all know, are pretty complex onions, right? We're very layered. But over the last, I would say 20 to 25 years, for some reason, and I don't really know why, your political party or your political ideology is like one of like the very top layers. And so our job is to try to kind of dig a little bit deeper. Like, yes, I know you're a Republican. Yes, you know I'm a Democrat. But like, let's just like put that to the side and let's try to get to know each other as friends and as people first. And then once we get to that point, you can start to have more meaningful and deeper conversations. So maybe when we're talking about that, I can learn for the fact that, maybe your sister adopted a Chinese child and then that child is starting to struggle with their Asian American identity, and then so that's a way to have a conversation that if I just assume, oh, you're a Republican, you don't care about my issues, that we wouldn't be able to have. So it's just a manner of trying to get deeper conversations than we generally have nowadays.
Excellent. Hope that will bring more synergy to the group by sharing candidly. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you so much for sharing.
Okay, I think you have a question.
Yes, I do. Um, Earlier, I actually noticed an Rui, right? Or what is his name? Yeah, thank you for sharing. But I noticed you talk about on committee or something about different ethnic group, different just like minority group, they can form a committee. I just wonder that's a non-partisan or it is kind of related to because I notice if you involve in politics and always have parties, right? Different you because it's very interesting if you say this is a group a committee, but they will have different idea. So I think you answer earlier the lady's questions really well. So it's just about we try to put aside kind of politic kind of opinion aside, and then you maybe form a certain common ground and to know each other better. I think this is a good idea. But it is, I just would like to know this committee, how that works, because you have a leader, you must have structure and what is agenda, how to running for what kind of thing. Okay, just give me a brief.
So if you're referring to kind of the Asian American Affairs Commission, for example. So how these are set up is that each of those have a 7-member executive committee. So it is one person appointed by the Speaker of the House, who's Republican, one member appointed by the minority leader in the House, who is a Democrat, one member who is appointed by the Senate President, who is a Republican, one member appointed by the Senate minority leader, who is a Democrat, and then 3 members appointed by the governor, who is currently a Democrat, but switches back and forth in Kansas a lot. And then the governor also gets to appoint their own executive director, who will almost certainly be of that party that they are. So yes, there's partisan leanings, especially as the governor makes their appointments. But there is always other party feedback in these. And then so, I guess the answer is like kind of both. It's partisan, but not as partisan as many things that happen in politics.
Yeah, that's really good. And actually, if you just like try to promote kind of whatever Chinese minority, we are support for get involved or whatever it is. I think my thinking idea, not necessarily thing is your, but I just think because everyone have different, just like politics have parties, right? But if we just focus on how to help this group of people, just like raise our voice and our presence in this society, influence and our culture. And this kind of thing is probably not exactly will need to relate it, just like Democrat or Republican. So I think that will be easily just draw other people together or put, we have more common ground of people and they would like to, because I don't, just like we're together have Asian face. We have a Chinese language as common. We are from China, right? So have a lot of things. This is regardless who knows your Republican Democrat. Nobody know. But you walk on the street of you something. People we immediately will kind of feel you are a certain group of people. So if we want our society, the people get more just like have more respect or kind of influence, or it's a certain I don't know how to say, but that just like our part of the of the society get more and more in just our position in this society in this country. I think we but not too much probably cannot just focus on politics. We just focus in China, how Chinese the value or those things, how to helpful or to be the minority, how to be bring value to this country, be the diversity or something. I think that probably will be better. If just like we have take it as a political party, probably people will have different. I don't know your mom. I only ask question. You don't have to answer. That's true, but it's just interesting. Your mom. I mean, sometimes mom probably don't doesn't like. Kids get involved in politics because politics is controversial and people like you, some people don't like you. Always have even present 50%, even 51%, 49%, still have half of the people don't like you. So it's not a lot of the people really like this kind of feeling, right? And so that's why a lot of the Chinese people try to avoid, and probably that's the reason. We don't want to don't like other people, just don't like us openly. So
Yeah, I think there's
yeah.
validity in that, definitely. I agree. Great points. And then, yeah, there's a lot of different avenues. There are nonpartisan civic ways to engage Asian Americans. And then, obviously, you can have your Asian American Republicans and your Asian American Democrats as well to build power in different ways. But yeah, overall, I just see a lot of opportunity for our community to advocate for ourselves.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
And if you think of anything after this, feel free to reach out to me. Just Google my name. My information should be everywhere. You could probably just Google Asian American Kansas representative and you'll find me as well. So I'm always more than happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
share
sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Contact in our group. I think so far is you are a good role model and it's a very inspiring story. Go for what you believe for and fight for what you believe for, and that's what we all should be. And okay, any more questions? If not,